Welcome back to SIGA's Female Leadership in Sport Web Summit. It's the final day, day 3. Ben Jacobs with you. All of our panels and keynote speeches are available on YouTube. Some will be up there very shortly, and the later ones, particularly from day 3, should be up by the end of the week. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter, SIG Alliance. And in addition, via the app and the website, you can donate as well to our cause. Even just the price of a cup of coffee would be greatly welcome. And not only will we put it towards champion integrity more broadly, but specifically, some of the money will go towards our female leadership program, where we mentor some of the sports leaders of tomorrow. And speaking of mentorship, we had a panel, a closed behind doors mentorship panel earlier in the day on leadership. Stay tuned, because we'll have plenty more of them to come. And if you're interested in joining SIGA and getting some of that mentorship, then go to our website and there's more details there. Thanks incidentally to those of you who have already donated. Please also tell us, using the hashtag SIGA Women, who are some of your women or male mentors in the industry. Who do you want to give a shout out to? Tell us why somebody has helped your career, and we'll be liking and engaging with them on social media. We're live, if you like, as well on Instagram as well. You can follow us via stories and check out the feed as well, because some of the highlights from the course of the week will be available on social media too. Let's move on though to our next webinar now. This is called Sports and Sport Fashion, Changing Cultures. We're delighted to be joined by King Huang, the Creative Director and Vice President for Strategic and External Affairs, Voice of Insiders. Matthew Groney is with us as well, the Managing Partner and Creative Director for Thermal Brands. Emma Mason is on this panel. She's the Vice President for Strategic and External Affairs at WFSGI, that's the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry. And Sally Namani is part of the panel too. She's the US Director of Programs and Partnerships at Peace Players. Our moderator, perfect for this panel because she's a cultural historian and author. It's a very good afternoon to Mary Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you to members of our panel for being here. I'm super excited about this discussion. Of course, there are a lot of things that we could talk about when it comes to sport and fashion. So we've honed in on a few key issues that relate more directly to SIGA, and we'll dig into those in a second. We thought we'd start by hearing from each of the panelists a little bit about themselves. But before we delve into that, just like to say that kind of background for all of this after the pandemic year is really the rise of athleisure. We can talk about sport against that background very easily, and the way in which women's dress over the past year in particular, but before that as well, have really started to lean into sports and sport fashion through not just the use of new kinds of fabrics and new kinds of styles, much more comfortable styles, but also through a new kind of approach to body positivity and empowerment of women and girls through that lens. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today, but let's hear from each of our panelists first, a little bit about themselves and maybe about how fashion and sport come together in their own work. Emma, would you like to start?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Emma Mason, and I have to give Rob a big congratulations on saying the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry so well. Normally people mistake WFSGI's name on the first readout, so congratulations there. I'm a former professional badminton player, but I'm now working for WFSGI as their Vice President for Strategic and External Affairs. And for those of you who don't know WFSGI, we're the Global Sporting Goods Industry Federation. So we have a membership-based organization. We have over 300 direct and 5,000 indirect members, ranging from the biggest brands, manufacturers and retailers, so your Nikes, your Adidas, your Under Armours, your Antas, right down to the smallest players in the industry who might just make one specific product for one specific sport. We work with our brands, so our members, on a range of non-competitive issues that are relevant for the industry. And the reason why I'm here speaking on this panel today is I've recently done a lot of work on a state of the sporting goods industry report that we published with McKinsey and Company at the start of the year, where we looked as one of the key trends as the rise of the athlete influencer and what that could potentially mean for women's sportswear. And also I work with the brands on the evolution of the International Sport Federation's rules and regulations, and also some of the major sporting events in the world, including the Olympic Games. And the importance of the rules and regulations there, of course, relate to the equipment and particularly the uniform and the product that the athletes are permitted to wear in elite sport. And for this topic, that's obviously relevant because what they are allowed to wear affects what the designers will make for them, and it also affects the image of the athlete and the image of the sport itself. And obviously for today's topic, we're looking specifically at female empowerment, so the image of female athletes and women's sport. So from a personal former elite athlete perspective, and also from the work that I'm doing today, I'm super excited about the intersection of sport and fashion, and really looking forward to the discussion today.
Great, thank you, Emma. Sally, do you want to say a few words?
Yes, good morning from warm New York City. I'm Sally Namani, and I am a community builder, a grassroots coach, a social entrepreneur, but my official title is the U.S. Director of Programs and Partnerships at Peace Players. For those of you who are not familiar, we are a global organization that uses the game of basketball to bridge divides in communities that have had a history of violence or conflict, to increase equitable sporting opportunities, and to develop young people as leaders. And so I'm coming to this conversation today from a community impact perspective, from the role that sports and fashion can play in creating equitable access for young girls to access quality sports attire, especially young girls who are growing up in inner cities in the United States or in other parts of the world. The athleisure movement is huge. It's taken the world by storm, but we also still find that many young people do not always have access to quality sports attire to reach their full potential in sports. And so that's what I'll be contributing to the conversation today. I was also recently featured on the Nike Global campaign as one of 3 women who are creating opportunities for girls to have access to sports. So very excited to bring that community impact perspective to this conversation. And I'm looking forward to learning from both Matthew and Emma on this call as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Sally. And Matthew, over to you.
Hi, Mary. Thank you very much. Good morning from slightly chillier Boston than New York City, but still very, very beautiful here. I have started a tiny agency called Thermal Brands. It is a brand management agency focused on luxury and lifestyle brands. We help manage fashion designers, fashion brands, wellness brands, beauty brands that are young, build their business. We like to do everything for them but design. So we let the designers design, but we help manage them. We also work very closely with large global brands like Puma, Gucci, Intel Gaming, Michelob Ultra on creating new product, creating new services, creating new activations, and help them also be more in line with emerging creatives. So we've helped design things like capsule collections for esports tournaments, fashion shows for New York Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week, and a variety of other events around what we would call culturally relevant moments, such as Art Basel, Formula One, NASCAR, Olympics, etc. I think my real passion and interest has been to help female designers work within what have traditionally been male designer dominated areas like sports and sports business units or kits. There are some exciting projects that we've been involved with some of our brilliant female designers on working with NBA and some of the leagues to kind of share their point of view creatively. And I think maybe the most important thing is I am the father of a 16-year-old daughter who is a soccer player and a lacrosse player. And I think it's just been a wonderful thing to learn from her and learn through her eyes how important sport is to her as she kind of builds her experience and takes her experience as an athlete into adulthood.
Great, all fantastic. And clearly we have a rich field to work from today. Let's start by talking just about a more general question. How do you see sport and fashion coming together to empower girls and women to change communities, kind of dipping back to what Sally was saying? Where's the power to make that change in what women and girls wear and how they wear it? Sally, you want to field that first?
Yes, I can. So I would say, fashion and sports are just huge platforms. We find that it's such a great way to reach young people and to reach a younger generation. And also just watching the athleisure movement and how much it's exploded over the last few years, it's actually made sports even more inclusive. I remember when I was growing up playing basketball, that sports attire that we had access to were mostly designed for male build. And now you find that there are tights available, you have shorts that are designed for girls, you have just a variety of availability when it comes to sports equipment and sports attire. And that has made sports even more inclusive, where girls would love to dress sporty because it's a fashionable thing to do, and girls want to get involved in sports because it's fashionable. And we also find like the rise of female athlete influencers have made sports even more an inclusive activity. And so I think that fashion and sports brands can really tap into this excitement and interest in athleisure and in sports. And by one, elevating female athletes, right? Elevating those stories. There's so many amazing women athletes who are doing great things, both in their sport and off the court, that those stories need to be told. And just relatable stories that are inspiring for young girls to see. I have young girls who are part of my girls basketball league here in Brooklyn who have never touched the basketball before, but they're showing up because they're curious. They're showing up because they open Instagram and they see that the cool girls are dressed in sporty attire, and it's something empowering about that. And also you find a lot of sports brands are also diversifying what their the sizes that are being offered, where, regardless of what your body size is or how you identify, that there's something that's available to you. And I think that's really empowering. I would love for us to continue to encourage that, to amplify that, to elevate that, because it's showing more young girls that there's a space for them in sports, that there's a space for them in the fitness industry, that it's okay to look strong, it's okay to work out. And it's really, for someone like me, that when we were in high school, going to the gym, you'd be the only girl in the gym, only the athletes were in the gym. Now you find other young girls are excited about, the fitness industry and starting a fitness journey, and the body positivity and the empowerment that comes out of that has been really exciting to watch. And I think that by just continuing to elevate those stories, those women athlete influencers, diversifying the stories that we see, will be really huge in just getting more girls in sports, empowering more girls. The research also shows that the more girls who are active in sports or just in a fitness lifestyle are more likely to be leaders. And so the more we invest in this and create more of these images and share more of these stories for young people to relate to, I think the more we can retain or attract and retain more girls in sports.
Yeah, so true. Emma, do you have thoughts about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can talk a little bit from kind of an elite sport perspective. So I think women's sport in general, and I speak having been obviously an elite athlete myself, we've been on a journey in terms of elite sport, right, over the last 100 or so years. If you go back to the first modern day Olympics, women were simply not allowed to compete. There was 245 men from like 14 odd countries, I think 43 different events, and women were told, no, you're simply not welcome. I can't remember the exact phraseology that was used at the time, but it was unaesthetic and it would be inappropriate for women to participate. So, if we go from there, which is obviously an absolute limitation on inclusion at any level in elite sport, and you come up to where we are today, which is obviously, fingers crossed, that the postponed Tokyo 2020 Olympics will take place this year. And it's being heralded as the first gender equal Olympic Games that has ever taken place. So 49% of the athletes that are going will be women. We have been on a big journey in terms of bringing females and women's sport into the sort of major mainstream platform, particularly in major sporting events. But when we talk about the intersection of sport and fashion, I think there's definitely still some way to go, and I think in women's sport we're still exploring, what is it that we think, or what is the most inclusive way that women's sport can be represented, right? Because the regulations for the uniforms that women wear at international sporting events, they're obviously set by either the international event organizer or the international federation. And traditionally, across both genders, they have focused on performance, safety, protection of the athlete, and more recently, to absolute credit, cultural differences, trying to make sure that, cultural differences or religious choice are recognized in uniforms that athletes are allowed to wear. I think when we talk about fashion, I would struggle to think of a particular set of regulations that embraced fashion as an aspect of international elite sport. I mean, and that's possibly a missed opportunity, and I think it's something we still need to explore going forwards. I mean, I'll take a particular hero of mine, which is Serena Williams. I mean, some of the outfits that she has worn in the tennis events that she has played are much more memorable to me than any other female tennis player, no matter whether she won or lost. I mean, I can still tell you the French Open where she wore that black catsuit, and I thought to myself, God, that's so incredible. It would be amazing to see other female athletes wearing that kind of thing. But then you come back to the aspect of choice as well. And that's why I say, I don't think we've yet found the sweet spot on these types of, how do we bring the element of fashion into men's and women's sport, right? We're not just talking about women's sport on that element where we have that intersection. But I think it's an exciting opportunity to explore, obviously from an inclusive perspective, for sure. Obviously from a fashion perspective, but I think also from the way in which the sports are presented, right? Again, Serena Williams, look at what she's done for the image, not just of tennis, but of herself, and obviously the brands that she works with. I mean, that's incredibly powerful as an argument. And if we could somehow harness that in the regulations that you have within sport, while obviously respecting choice and cultural and religious differences, but then I think you have an opportunity to create even more female role models for the next generation coming through, and to make sport relevant for those young girls who are growing up now.
It's so true. Serena Williams is such a fantastic example too, because of the way in which she works with brands at all kinds of levels. So, one of the other elements at play here in the dynamic between fashion and sport is the reach to haute couture and the way in which street style and sports style has influenced fashion up to its highest levels. Matthew, you mentioned that you are working with designers and also, working in areas that have been traditionally dominated by male athletes. How do you see fashion playing a role there in the kinds of issues that Sally and Emma were just discussing?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things that I think are really also helping to catalyze almost a level of equality between women designers and men designers in traditionally kind of sport uniform design. And I think one is genderless sizing. And while it sounds somewhat basic or obvious, it starts all the way upstream where, if a brand wants to put out a really unique collection, it's a capsule, it's a collab between themselves and a celebrity. 9 times out of 10, the discussion now is to make it genderless sizing or unisex sizing, because they recognize how valuable it is to have an offering that can be worn by anybody. Does it need to be this kind of mental process of what size am I in men's, what size am I in women's? It's basically this acknowledgement that anybody that's hip to this specific capsule will be able to wear it and be able to wear it with confidence. The second is, I think, is kind of getting just more coverage on women athletes or women celebrities wearing sports as kind of streetwear. And streetwear has kind of always been this driving force in taking athletic wear and turning it into kind of a streetwear culture. We've seen it back in the day from oversized NBA jerseys to a point in time where there was soccer jerseys to et cetera. And I think now, little by little, you're starting to see more women athletes, professional athletes, show up in kind of fit pics on Instagram that were traditionally dominated as almost tunnel pics by male athletes, because they're now driving a part of this culture, wearing these same brands, wearing unisex sizing brands, wearing the same thing that the boys wear, and wearing it better and catching more media attention. So I think that the way I interpret kind of fashion catching up with sport and sport catching up with fashion is kind of universalizing things like accessibility to things like fit pics of athletes in social media, women athletes wearing Off-White, wearing all of the, Virgil, top 10 Nike, et cetera. And then second is having designers create collections meant for anybody. As I mentioned, one of the examples is in the case of Puma, which is a brand I work with. They are responsible for designing and sponsoring many of the soccer kits throughout Europe. And some of the projects we've been talking about is having our women designers, our women brand partners, collabs, design these kits for the team themselves. So that's the kits that the team seen on the airplane when they wave. It's the outfits that have all of the photo opportunities. Traditionally, those have been always kind of high men's fashion designers get selected for that role. Not too dissimilar to what we would see with like Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren when they would design the US Olympic kits. But we have the chance to take a team like AC Milan, which has kind of almost a fashion flavor to it, and have one of our women designers, whether it's Maria Jonkoy or Rupa Pemaraju, design her point of view, those unique kits. And so for the first time, you would get a Indian female Brooklyn designer creating these kits for an Italian soccer team that would then be shown through her community and the AC Milan community. So it's things like that that we feel are really important to allow both sides of that discussion, learn about each other, build a partnership, and hopefully build what we would call a string of pearls of all these beautiful, kind of new partnerships that come across over time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the issue of partnership and collaboration has certainly been central to this sport and fashion connection over years now. I know there's a lot of collaboration when it comes to the world of sneakers, and that has been a point of focus for years now. I don't know if any of you all would like to address that and speak specifically to that, but one of the things that has been noticeable over the past few years is the way that sneakers have become, they're still a main idea, but that the collaborative impulse has gone beyond the sneaker, again, all the way from street style to the highest level of haute couture. Anybody have any thoughts on that they'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to quickly just mention that technology has brought a lot to sneaker accessibility for young designers and artists. Many years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you wanted to do a collab partnership with a sneaker brand, you almost had to guarantee that you could sell or move 5,000 to 10,000 units of sneakers. Because by the time that all the money was spent to build it in China and recoup it, you'd have to show some sort of purchase order value for a large volume. Well, today, even with the big global brands, they've now been able to create small and short run and cost-effective production programs where you can, if you're a designer and you have access to sharing your story successfully with a big brand, you can get 300 or 400 pairs of shoes built for you that you can then market. And what that means is a lot of micro regional influencers, regional celebrities, regional athletes can safely build a relationship where they can create partnerships with big brands to make only 400 pairs of shoes and start small in building their brand. And then the second thing is customization has really also become, kind of the artistry of sneaker making. And we've seen in the last couple of years, amazing amount of brilliance artistically, but also commercially, in women artists being able to become known as customizers, designing shoes for NFL players for on field, designing shoes for Formula One drivers. So those one of one that they're creating, they're being able to demonstrate their own expertise, knowledge, and well-deserved respect in something like, again, customization, which typically used to be also somewhat of a male-dominated sneaker colorer or marker or painter type of person. So both of these, I think, have done are a nice start to how sneakers have continued to evolve between men designers and women designers and artists.
I think that's an area where people would not naturally think that women are becoming more empowered in that design layer of development of sneakers and apparel, but particularly sneakers. Sally, you're doing a lot of work with Nike. Do you see any of this in your work?
Eric, can you please repeat the question? Let me just make sure I've got you right.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the role of women designers in creating the product, in creating particularly sneakers. And you know, in one way, that's a great way in which women are empowered in sport, maybe a little bit behind the scenes. I'm wondering if in your work for Nike, you come into contact with that at all.
So yeah, so a lot of my relationship with Nike is really from a community social impact side. So I work pretty closely with their social impact team in North America. And what I found is, especially around just the storytelling, I can't speak with expertise on the design side, but storytelling around like sharing out sneakers or from female athletes or from male athletes as well. There's really been a dedicated focus in getting and sharing the stories of local girls sports teams, local sports, women's sports communities. For example, I'm part of a women's basketball community here in Brooklyn called Hoop York City. And the founder is an entrepreneur and has had a background in shoe design and shoe marketing. And we find that we get a number of opportunities through her relationship with the brands to amplify our community, to amplify like the sisterhood. And so I can't really speak with expertise on the design part, but as far as like the storytelling, the marketing piece, you find there's a lot of women's sports communities who are being elevated and amplified in the space.
Yeah, that's so great. And in your work, you deal kind of with the big picture of all of this. And I'm wondering what you see ahead in terms of market share for and sort of the growth of this area of women designer created product.
Yeah, I mean, I can't touch too much on the specifics because we tend to work up at the global level on trends, but I can probably talk about 2 points that I think I'm certainly excited about in terms of women's sport going forwards, and particularly the relationship with the sporting goods industry. I mean, I think the first is, and I touched on it a little bit in the introduction, is that we have this big shift going on now in terms of where marketing spend is going. You know, traditionally sports marketing was really related to physical assets and largely tied around, or the big proportion of it was largely tied around major sporting events. And over the last certainly 5 to 8 years, that has really shifted. And as a result of COVID last year, there's been another push forwards from marketing spend going from these kind of physical assets around major sport events, much more towards individual influencers. And that, of course, includes professional athletes. And there's a clear reason for that. You know, obviously we have this big trend in brands using digitally enabled direct-to-consumer models in order to get their products out. That's been clear, and it was, you know, heavily influenced and accelerated by COVID as a result of all of us spending so much time online. And I think from a brand perspective, you know, in that particular environment, in the digital space, athletes are much better, you know, vehicles or marketing vehicles and influencers as well than these types of physical assets. I mean, the report we released earlier this year, where we surveyed all of our membership, so at the global level, 43% of brands said that they expected marketing spend to shift from major sporting events towards more individual athletes and influencers. And that's it. That's a huge statement. And the reason that's relevant for what we're talking about today is I think it creates opportunity, because when consumers see individual athletes and influencers, they actually expect more from them than these major sporting events. And when I say more, I mean that they are looking for those individual athletes and influencers to take a stand on something, you know, and that includes social justice issues. I mean, there was a very interesting study done by, I think, Nielsen Sports last year, where they said that 72% of consumers felt that athletes or influencers, you know, had this unique position and a unique opportunity to influence. So when we're thinking about women's sport, female empowerment, you know, inspiring young girls coming through, I think that this trend, this shift from marketing physical assets towards the athletes and influencers gives our female athletes a real role model opportunity, you know, to raise their profile and to really have a clear influence on the, you know, the girls, the communities that they are looking to transform. So I think that's point one. And I think point two is probably that, you know, from an overall sporting goods industry perspective, and Matthew's probably got some interesting insights on this as well, but we are projecting on the basis of the data that we did, that female sportswear as a category and athleisure as a separate category, so it's obviously men's and women's, you know, that's going to be a significant driving force for growth in the sporting goods industry, you know, from 2020 up to 2023. And I think that type of business argument for female sportswear and for athleisure is something that can be a real driving force for change in women's sport.
Matthew, did you want to pick up on that at all?
Yeah, I would agree with Emma. I certainly have seen with some of our clients that women's sportswear, women's run training as a category is becoming not only more focused on technology, more focused on materials innovation, but equally focused on being on trend or driving style, you know, working with artists to create beautiful, you know, running apparel, working on, you know, yoga lines and athleisure lines. There was certainly some shift from group fitness, which used to be big, and then kind of COVID had shut down group fitness, to peel everything back to just kind of taking care of one's self from a physical wellness and a mental wellness standpoint. And a lot of that started with solitary exercise during COVID. So women running again, women doing yoga again, those that were not extremely active in it before, you know, has given way to them changing their actual behavior that, you know, sportswear providers are now really looking at trying to build beautiful product around. So that includes, again, you know, sports bras that fit. You know, you'd be surprised or maybe not so surprised to know that, you know, sports bras for many years had always been so problematic because they were designed by men, you know, kind of duh, that kind of makes sense. So having, you know, a lot more attention to fit, a lot more attention to aesthetics, a lot more attention to utility. And then of course, because there's no real transition from sportswear in many instances to kind of go to work wear, you're in it, you know, all day or a predominant part of the day, it's going to have to look really, really good. And on top of it all, that category, which is growing, is attracting what traditionally wouldn't be in it, like brands, like corporate brands, or high-end fashion brands. So, you know, Prada's and others looking to get down to sportswear because they recognize that the category is really, really growing. So those sportswear brands like Nike, Puma, you know, those that are in the Peloton, SoulCycle, all of those are really at a great spot because they can make more on-trend apparel, keep their core, and yet they have this expertise to make, you know, kind of cost-effective performance wear, whereas a lot of the high fashion brands don't certainly have that. So the category is booming. I expect it to grow probably at least into 24 is kind of where our numbers have been. We at Puma, again, through my work with Puma, are already in the design calendar of spring summer 23. So, we're already way out naturally in working with women designers and artists on Run Train for 23 season. So it is one of these very, very exciting spots for brands that are in sportswear.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And just to pick up a little bit on the e-commerce direct-to-consumer model that we've seen really evolve, particularly during the pandemic. So I'm wondering how the in-person experience that you're describing around community translates when you have this e-commerce component or the digital experience for the girls that you work with. Do you see any kind of balance there, or is there gravitation toward one or the other?
Gravitation towards in-person versus virtual community experiences?
Yeah, I'm just wondering for the girls particularly that you work with, are they feeling that community by gathering now, or is it mostly a virtual community for them?
Yeah, so it's been a hybrid. And so all through the summer, at the start of the pandemic last year, we pivoted to completely virtual. My basketball hoop behind me is actually part of our our virtual programming. But we found that at the height of it, families were just devastated. There was just so much going on, and being able to our program kind of remained a constant in a lot of our young people's lives. Obviously, sport is an experience that that requires like sitting next to your teammates and saying hello to your coaches and giving high fives to your teammates, and having to take part in that experience virtually is never ideal. But I think one of the things we've been able to do really well is bring in that in-person experience to the virtual space. So for example, we hosted a 3-day event in January in celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King, and it was all virtual. We engaged partners nationally, from the NBA teams to WNBA teams, and our Nike community ambassadors, which is the volunteer arm of Nike. And so being able to have people from diverse experience, different activities were brought onto the virtual space, just kept things fresh. And so that allowed us to continue to engage our kids virtually and keep that sense of community. One of the things that we've also done pretty well is mailing home kits. So, T-shirts, journals to use during virtual sessions, supplies to use during virtual programming. Like having those things at home has been able to allow us to bring that in-person experience where we can work on shooting with in our living room, or we can work on our ball handling, and our parents are in the background and listening to. Parents also get to be a part of this community that their kids are a part of. I think that's something that's been really special, in that we've been able to involve even more adults, whereas like in the past, it's like in the gym, it's a space for the young people. And with hosting programming at home, we found that parents and guardians at home every now and then will pop by the screen and say hello, and like just that sense of community is still very much there. And so we're looking forward to the summer, hopefully being able to have some kind of like in-person outdoor, small group convenings. As the vaccine is rolled out in New York City, we expect that we should be able to go back to that in-person space. But the most important thing is that this community that we've built, we started it in 2017, that it stayed alive throughout the pandemic, whether young people were participating in virtual basketball programming, or whether they weren't. We were still checking in and calling parents and just making sure that kids are doing okay. And so it's tough, but there's been lots of silver linings and just bright moments throughout all of this, and the community is still very much alive.
That is so great to hear about the resiliency there. I think that sport has become just one of those things in the pandemic that everyone can cling to, whether it is at home in your gym or doing push-ups in your living room or yoga. Everybody has had that opportunity to find some peace and some stability through sport. And I love what you're talking about, Sally, the sort of holistic element of it. So sport for kids becomes not just something that you go someplace and do, but you're doing it and your mom's walking around behind you, or your cat is, you know, bombing the Zoom or whatever is happening. I wonder about an issue that's kind of been lurking in the background, which is the difference between athleisure and sportswear. And it seems to me that that has something to do with technologies, performance, and the research and development that goes into materials, and that may affect the supply chain somewhere along the line. I wonder if anybody would like to speak to that. Where do we draw the line, or is it even the line that we can draw anymore between athleisure and sportswear? And maybe Emma, you're in a good seat maybe to discuss that.
It's a good question. And I mean, I would love to hear what the other panelists think about this, but I would say that the line is very much blurred now. I mean, when you're going into elite sport, you have obviously certain performance requirements, right? You know, and some of the products will be much more technical depending on which sport you're in. You know, and that's where the brands invest a significant amount in research and development, whether it's material evolution and whether it's structural evolution of a product. So there you're talking about, you know, really high quality technical products. When I think we go down to the athleisure end of the scale, we're looking much more at, it's a different use case, right? It's functionality, it's fashion. It doesn't have the necessarily have the high technical specifications of some of the elite sport performance products. But that's from a kind of use case analysis. From an actual visual perspective, you know, there's been a much there's been a lot more divergence in you know, the way that things look. So I mean, from my perspective, I do see the difference clearly still, particularly in the cost to produce a product. But yeah, I'd be keen to hear what the others think about this as well.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I can chime in really briefly. I think to Emma's point, the line is blurred. You know, and I keep going back to my experience as an athlete, and also my young people who are part of my program. You find that, you know, the athleisure gear, you know, some girls will show up in their tights and they want to participate and play in the tights. And I think it's a multifunctionality of athleisure that has even, you know, just continues to make the sporting experience fun for girls, where they can wear what they like. They don't necessarily have to wear their, you know, uniforms, but especially in a grassroots program like ours. In an elite program, it's a bit different. But you find that it's just made the playing experience even more relaxed, where they're not thinking too hard about what they're wearing. But again, going back to an elite athlete will pay, you know, closer attention to what they're wearing in terms of like performance. But again, the line I think is super blurred.
Matthew, over to you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, very similar. I think it starts really with the use case or the actual kind of performance requirement. As an example, with something like footwear, you would have footwear, you know, technology and cost built to reduce things like weight, reduce things like wear. So you would be using, you know, premium material, premium engineering to remove material, et cetera. That, again, when you would go down to the casual athlete, you simply just wouldn't need it. And therefore your cost analysis would be, we don't need to try to charge $250 for this elite shoe for a demographic that traditionally is running, you know, a casual 5K. So I think that's kind of the difference between true sportswear that stems out of very performance, competitive driven utility, and something like athleisure, which is, look, I do participate. I participate not as a professional. I participate, you know, for myself. And, you know, there's a lot more of me. So it needs to be built for my economic model, whether I'm a parent, I'm a casual athlete, or I'm a child. So I think that's how they break it out. I think the parity, though, that we are seeing is the trend and style. So, you know, before you would basically be able to buy your cheapest gym shoe in like one color, it'd be white or it'd be black. If you went to TJ Maxx or you went to Payless or you went to some of the discount retail, there would be one or two models. Well, now it doesn't really matter, you know, what the price point is. The trend will still drive whether that shoe's purchased or not. And in fact, everyone, you know, kind of feels like, you know, things like colorways and CMTs, which is CMFs, colors, materials, and finishes, is a huge part, regardless of whether the cost of goods of the shoe is $5, $15, or $50. So I think that that is still going to always rule supreme, whether it is athleisure wear or sportswear, and that is that true kind of aesthetic style driven, that is, you know, set by, you know, a specific athlete, or set by a specific season, or set by some specific color trend.
Yeah. We are running low on time, and before we have to say goodbye, I want to just get to the sort of essence of SIGA's mission here, and talk for a minute, if you would, about anti-corruption and how sport and fashion can come together, or where they can intersect to help reduce and eliminate corruption in sport. I welcome your thoughts about that, because at the end of the day, that's where the empowerment and the community and the product development and everything we've been talking about really leads. So Sally, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, you know, SIGA's commitment to youth development and child protection is, that component will be really huge in supporting, you know, grassroots organizations like the one that I work with, and really developing, you know, resources that will support, you know, organizations and subsequently young people on the ground who are part of these grassroots programs. You find that, you know, fashion brands, a number of fashion brands have their social impact on, or social responsibility on. And there's been a huge investment recently in the youth sports space. For example, Nike, who we work, Peace Players works closely with, has just really increased their commitment to being a thought leader in this space, putting out research, putting out standards that organizations can adhere to in creating really fun sporting experiences for young people. And, you know, to what Matthew and Emma have shared on this conversation today, you find there is a lot of intersection between fashion and streetwear and young people. And so with you know, brands having that star power and that platform, you know, grassroots organizations are looking to them to elevate the work that's being done. And at the same time, there's, you know, a unique opportunity for SIGA, especially, to work closely with these brands and influencing what the governance is in this space, and really building a coalition and an ecosystem around this. There's a number of things that exist, resources that exist out there, but it would be great to have like standardized recommendations around child protection and youth in the youth development space. And I think that fashion and sports brands can play a role in that.
I'm seeing a 0 come up on our timer. So I think with your eloquent statement there, Sally, we will have to leave it for today. I hope there'll be a part 2 to sport and fashion, and that we can all come together once again to talk about this. But for now, thank you all so much for being here today and for sharing your ideas and thoughts on this big issue. And we will, as I said, hopefully come together again and help to advance the mission of SIGA around the ideas of and the realities of sport and fashion. So thank you very much. And I think that closes us out for today.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jane Bond, and I'm the head of brand, PR and communications at the Hong Kong Group Union, and also a mentee of the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Programme. So welcome to the SIGA Web Summit on female mentorship in sports. In terms of mentorship, to me, being part of a programme like SIGA has been super empowering and super beneficial, and I've been amazed by the sort of calibre of mentors that have been available to chat to, some women really at the top of their sporting careers. We've chatted about stories, about how they developed their careers, and really quite amazed to hear of the challenges that they've been through and how they've overcome things, something that I imagine myself getting through at some point too. So learning those kind of new skills and how to approach things has been really, really beneficial for me. Loved it so far, and would really recommend anyone starting out in their career or looking to develop their career further to find something similar or get involved in SIGA, because it really is very beneficial. So thank you very much for all who have organised this.
Hi, my name is Inês and I'm the founder of Sports Embassy, a Portuguese social company that promotes career transition for professional athletes. And I would like to welcome you to the SIGA Web Summit on Female Mentorship in Sports. During 3 days, we will share ideas on the main topics that have been concerning women in general and how it relates to sports. How can sports organizations empower women in sports, being sports ruled, practiced and run mainly by men? Sports teaches us that equity means we don't need equality, and I truly believe this. Why can't we all transfer this to our daily life? So a video today shared by Sally Pearson, where a girl throws a shirt to the crowd at a basketball game. If you haven't seen it, you should. Because, and as Sally says, throw like a girl, don't mind if I do. See you all on March the 8th. Hashtag SIGA Women.
Hi, my name's Angela Smith. I'm Chair of Stoke City Supporters Council and I'm a member of the SIGA Standing Committee on Gender, Race, Inclusion and Diversity. I'm also very proud to be a mentor for SIGA. Programs like SIGA Women empower girls and they help them to gain the confidence to determine their own story, and it also ensures that all girls get the opportunity to achieve their dreams while showing there's no limit on what they can achieve.
My name is Alexandra Pinto Coelho. I'm 43 years old and I'm a sports law lawyer. My inspiration that led me to become a sports law attorney was my love for sport in general and in particular with football. I've always been involved in sport, whether as a player, spectator or volunteer, and it just made sense to aim to combine that with the day job. I'm from a small town in north of Portugal where there is a club with one of the largest associative masses. We breed football. Given my training law, I decided to combine sport with law, which led me to study sports law. After taking the college, I started writing sports law in a local sports newspaper and growing up as a sports law lawyer. I am immensely proud to win in a world especially dominated by men, which makes me even more powerful. A piece of advice I give to all women, especially those in the world of sport: never give up being what you want to be. There is still prejudice against women in the world of sport, but social mentalities are changing and we women are the cause of this. Don't be put off by the male-dominated environment. Make your voice heard.
Hello everyone, my name is Ana Marques and I am currently the Vice President of the Portuguese Sports Law Association. I was born in a sports family and since I was young, the sport lived in me. When I decided to take a law degree, I quickly realized that I can choose. So I fought to win my place in this industry. It was not an easy journey, I have to say, but it worth it in every way. Being a woman in sport is a daily challenge, but sport helped me to discover the world and helped me to understand the importance of looking outside of the box and see opportunities when the most people see risks. And being a woman in sports is about taking risks. A risk to make the difference, the risk to break prejudice, and the risk to make history.
Hello, my name is Natasha Soares and I'm a Portuguese sports lawyer. In sports, gender equality is still a vision waiting to be fulfilled, and will only be possible when we will start seeing women in leadership roles across sports federations, professional leagues and football clubs. For women to reach these roles, there are two essential actions that should be practiced now and always. Firstly, we should not be indifferent towards situations that promote gender inequality. There should be a critical attitude and a zero-tolerance policy regarding inequality. Secondly, women in their various roles in society should continue to do exactly what we do every day, and that is giving our best. Moreover, I consider that it is important to keep in mind that where there is great power, there is great responsibility. The larger the role in question, our personal qualities should be even larger and should exceed our role's obligations. There is still a long road ahead to achieve gender equality in sports, but there is a Portuguese saying stating that o caminho faz-se caminhando, which means that the way is made by walking along it.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Murim. I'm a lawyer and also a member of Portuguese Sports Law Association. In his youth, my father was a football player. Well, not a professional one, but he passed to me his passion to sports. And it's important to reinforce that I'm an only child. During my high school, I studied in France, where I was a volleyball athlete, and I chose to study law during my college years, but also stayed focused in sport. It's not easy, it's right, especially when we work in the masculine world. Over the decades, we women, we have been fighting for our affirmation in a world that we say to be men. Our fight for equality is more and more in sight. We are creating our opportunities and gaining space, particularly in sport, as athletes, referees, or leaders. And because those who run for pleasure never tire. Happy Women's Day.
Hello, my name is Matilde Costa Dias. I am 31 years old and I am proudly a Portuguese sports lawyer. I had quite a traditional academic and professional path until I decided to take a risk and align my law degree with my passion for sports. It wasn't easy at the beginning, especially because this is mostly a men's world, but with great persistence, merit, and a huge support from my colleagues and friends, I ended up working abroad for a top sports law firm where I spent the last 5.5 years. A few months ago, I embarked on a new journey and joined the team of a Portuguese sports law firm whose founders bet and trusted in my professional capacities and where I feel that my work is constantly being valued. I am very grateful to be part of a new breed of women who combine quality in sports law, a strong academic and sporting background, and of course, the much needed human and feminine touch. If I had to give an advice to all women who wish to become a sports lawyer, I would say to never give up, ever. Happy Women's Day.
Hello everyone, my name is Marcia Sintra. I am a board member of Arena Hub in Brazil. Thanks for inviting me to be here today. Yes, women have been fighting fiercely for equality in sports over the decades. We all know that coverage of women's sports is not yet the same as men's, that women are usually paid differently from men, especially when it comes to prizes. But we cannot ignore the many advances in encouraging the girls to participate more and more in sports. And as you know, more involvement means more opportunities for titles and medals, and this is in itself an important accomplishment, I think. Hopefully the world of sports will continue to go into this direction, and sometime soon athletes will all be treated equally. At least this is our goal.
Hi, my name is Laura Senatibli. I'm a dietitian and a career student at the Pan-African University Life and Health Sciences Institute, and I'm a mentee on the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Program with a wonderful mentor. So I say welcome to the SIGA Web Summit on female mentorship in sports, and as we say in Ghana, Akwaba and Wezo. And one of the important reasons why such mentorship programs are essential is the fact that it provides us with real and concrete tools. Aside that, you get to learn from those that are currently in the industries, and they impact so much. I'm learning so much from my mentor. It's been an amazing journey so far. So once again, it's one of the reasons why it is really essential. We should have more and more of such mentorship programs being rolled out across the world. So once again, I say welcome to the SIGA Web Summit.
Hello everyone, my name is Onika Mambeu. I am a Zimbabwean and I am a master's student studying sports management and policy development at the Pan-African University of Science and of Life and Earth Sciences in Nigeria. I am a mentee on the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Program, and my mentor is Ms. Nomsa Mahlangu from South Africa. What sports organizations should do to empower girls in sports is to give an opportunity to lead, give them an opportunity to be in the structures, have faith and trust in them so that they can take up the positions that are there in sports, and not to sideline them and to leave the positions for just the males. So I feel they should be motivated to take up the roles, they should be educated, and they should also be given the chance to lead. That will also boost their self-esteem, and also there's need for them to network with other successful sports administrators, sport scientists, sport personnel that are there in sport, so that they will be inspired to take up the lead. The SIGA mentoring program, it's a platform that is very important for women or young women in sports, because it helps them to network with people from all over the world. You see, for instance, now in this pandemic, people can actually network with people that are all over the world, getting to learn about the different trends that are happening, getting to learn about different opportunities that are there. And you find that it is not just a platform for people to learn, but when you network, when opportunities arise, you'll be able to know about them, and also you'll be able to make use of the connections that you have made through the program to link up with the right people at the right time. It also helps in identifying the current trends that are happening, so that people are well informed on what is happening globally.
Hi, I'm Marissa Schlenker, Program Manager from Eunice Sports Hub. I'm a mentee with the SIGA Women Global Mentorship Program. I'm privileged to have been matched with Catherine Ordway from Australia, who's agreed to support me in my leadership and career journey. This mentorship program is so fundamental because it creates the platform and the space for women leaders who are at different points in their lives to connect, exchange, reflect, and grow together. Not only do we get to connect with our mentors, but we have the chance to exchange and share with our fellow mentees. We know mentoring programs can have the conditions and factors to be designed to lead to success, but we also know that it's very much about the individuals and what they put into it. I'm committed to this program because I'm committed to goal number 5 in ensuring that all girls and women have greater opportunity to and access in sport. Thank you for this.